Welcome back to another episode of In Swine Versation. Triumphant return with Mishael Barton. Welcome to the program, Mishael.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. I know in 2021, you returned to the pork industry, joining Triumph Foods as communications manager after a 2-year stint with KQTV. So welcome back to the pork industry, Mishael. Can you talk a little bit about your background, your journey, your career, and what made you join Triumph?
Sure. So I tell people I married into ag a long time ago. Very true. Married a farm boy. But my early career was in advertising in West Texas, and my most of my clients were ag related. And we've moved around a little bit. I was in charge of communications and marketing for public relations for the Ross Park Zoo in upstate New York. And so I count that as agriculture, lots of animals of different kinds. And then when we moved back to the Midwest, all of my career path here has been really ag related, from ag distribution, production. And then I started working for a small startup called Tenacity, which I loved and helped build some brands there. Transitioned out of that for various reasons, and then was given an opportunity to come here and have fallen in love with Triumph Foods, and I couldn't be happier to be right where I am sitting.
What's the comparison from the product side with Tenacity, which was a little bit in line with your advertising background, comparing it now with Triumph being on the production side, but in communications?
So I do obviously communications, and this position is I would say 99% communication. The Triumph has a unique agreement with Seaboard Foods, and they handle the marketing side and the true product side. My job is literally to let our people know what's going on, all of our employees, and externally to keep the brand of Triumph and relevant, and people let people know who we are. Excuse me.
Have like a process for communications, and how can we improve internal communications in companies and then externally with how we communicate with the public?
Yes, absolutely. So internally, we have about 2,500 employees. We have some internal communication channels with television monitors throughout our common spaces. We have an app that we use. We have an email address that we can reach people who have a desktop. Externally, we have process as well. It's more going through channels to make sure that what we're presenting outwardly is in line. Excuse me. I have a PR company, Wickstead, that helps me with those channels as well. We do a lot of donations. We do a lot of things in the community, and we want to make sure that our messaging certainly is consistent, and they help with that. And I have an internal helper as well who takes care of 90% of the internal communications. So she is my right hand, I say, and sometimes my left.
You've got a big team and you filter a lot of responsibilities down the pipeline. Now, is there a difference between branding and communications?
So I think branding is part of communications. Branding is ever so important, right? It's the logo, it's the name, it's the reputation that you see behind that logo. And that's part of a communication strategy, getting that name out there, getting the messaging you want. But I think, like I said, it's a piece of the communications in and of itself.
I feel some companies underrate the value of communications. So I'm not sure your take on that, of what makes communications an underrated aspect of how a company should run.
I think everyone thinks they communicate well. I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people take it for granted that we're just communicating, and it's an easy thing to do. But we all fall into those situations where we think we have been clear about something, and maybe it is not interpreted the same as we meant it. We have a very diverse population here, which I think is one of our strengths. So I'm very cognizant of different languages, different cultures, and making sure that you're communicating specifically and it's being interpreted right. we've all gotten those emails and we read it one way, somebody else meant it another way. And people can tell by your body language, by your tone, all of those things. So I think communications is taken for granted and underrated, because every move you make, every word you say is judged by that person who receives it. And we have to just be very cognizant of what we're saying and how we're saying it.
Kind of another form of communications is the Triumph slogan, which is your pride comes from being different than the competition. So what makes Triumph different than the competition?
Well, I think Triumph is different. One, in its structure. We are a farmer-owned company. When Triumph was first started, that was a novel concept. Excuse me. And so I think we grew from that and kind of, I like to say, started a trend of producer-owned processing facilities. But I love that we're diverse. I love that we can do things that other people can't because of that. I can walk down the hallway and run into a myriad of people that are from countries all over this world. You can't just do that anywhere. But I think we have a culture of promoting from within, of putting our employees first, of, listening to what their needs are and responding. And I have colleagues and friends who haven't always had that opportunity. And I think that makes us very different.
And that's part of your culture then?
It is part of our culture.
So it didn't just happen, it's kind of by design.
It is by design. Like you said, their industry in general, but from the meatpacking perspective, has always been very diverse. But I think it is absolutely a strength of ours, and it is in our culture.
So you guys have had a bit of an ambitious growth plan. From 2003, an operational plant in 2006 to now one of the premier pork processors in the US. So
Yeah.
what process has led to this achieving these goals?
I think it's forward thinking from the ownership group. They had a vision, they had a plan, and they've executed that plan with forethought. And we continue to grow. We continue to expand our technology. Our facility is large, but we went through a little bit of an expansion this past year, adding a couple of new spaces. And so I think it was all by design. And I think they were ambitious. But whenever you're ambitious, most people who are that way have a plan and a way to get there. And again, I think it was by design.
Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Oh, wow. From a company standpoint, we want to be the best. That's one of our slogans. We are pursuing pork perfection. Perfection is something that we may not ever achieve, but the closer we can get every day, we want to be 10 years closer to that. Personally, I would love to still be right here, leading the charge. I love my company. I love what I do. The people I work with are second to none. So
what challenges do you see in the industry, and does that correlate with any challenges at Triumph?
I think our industry has a few challenges. Like all industries right now, labor is always going to be a challenge. You can't walk down the street without finding someone who needs help, right? And so labor is always going to be a challenge, especially in our industry. Excuse me. Inflation is always going to be an issue. The prices of feed, and since we are producer owned, all of those things kind of play into that. And then we just have to be cognizant of a changing marketplace too, and consumer needs and consumer wants, and making sure that we're meeting those needs.
What's new and exciting at Triumph?
New and exciting. Oh my goodness, every day is a new day. I think things that are new and exciting here are our expansion and our innovation and some of the new equipment that we are bringing in, and some of the new processes. One way around labor issues sometimes is to bring in equipment to make jobs easier for people. and that way we can repurpose that position into something else. And so I think we have some great things coming up with our partner, Seaboard, and we own half of Daly's Premium Meats, which is we call it the bacon plant. And so we have some great things working with all of that. And just watching our enterprise as the enterprise grows. We have another company, Seaboard Trying Foods, which is we own half of as well, and just working together with all of those entities to make a better enterprise.
We're going to talk about recruiting and labor, but side note, I know you enjoyed a nice cruise a few weeks ago. You came back with a cold, and you're a trooper to join us there. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you. I apologize. I hate being stuffy, but it was worth it for the cruise.
I know your colleagues, they'd still trade places with you.
I'm sure they would.
So, like as you mentioned, a challenge labor. So I came to the pork industry outside of the industry. So being in the industry now, I can see all of the opportunities that are available, right? So sometimes when you're young and you go to school, it's like be a doctor, a lawyer, be in media or something like that. But you don't recognize that certain industries, whether it's the pig industry, cattle, construction, that there's a plethora of career opportunities. So do you think we need to educate young people about that aren't in the industry to showcase that, hey, you can join the pork industry, you can become a doctor, a vet, a communications manager, a marketing person, so they can actually visualize that opportunity, and that might be a good way to recruit and maintain talent? Or what are you seeing?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to do is to showcase our facility. I've had 2 requests just in the past 2 days of high school students from counselors who want to come the end of the year, their field trip, if you will, and tour the facility. That's wonderful because a lot of these kids may not be from an ag family. Some of them may, some of them may not. But I think it's important that they can see the career opportunities we have within our facility. We have over 800,000 square feet of space here: communications, accounting, maintenance, engineering, human resources, recruiting, and then of course all the production. So there are so many. I think you're right, a plethora of opportunities. You can be anything. You can be anything you want to be here at Triumph Foods. We have quality assurance. We have safety. We have a director of veterinary services. We have a lab. All of those things, and I think students in particular don't really know. We have become so far removed from our food sources. Where if you ask inner city kids, a lot of times, where does your food come from? The grocery store. So it gives an opportunity not just to highlight the job, but the industry and where your food comes from, whether it's pork or beef or vegetables. A lot of people just don't realize what it takes to get the food on your table.
Especially like the food industry is so huge.
Yes.
Like everybody eats, and there's a lot behind the scenes. So like you said, bringing that education to the forefront and the tours of Triumph. Is that something you guys have always done, or is that new?
We have actually. The facility was designed for that. We have you have to be of a certain age based on USDA regulations, excuse me, to be on the floor. You have to be at least 18, but I have high school groups that come through, and we have windows that overlook the production floor on both the hot and cold side, so that you can see a little glimpse into the world of our production from above. And so, yeah, so the facility was actually designed that way, to be able to showcase what we do from above.
So what about as an industry as a whole for the pork industry? Do you think each company, well, rightfully, we should be focused on profit, but how can we focus on the profit internally, or do we have a social responsibility as an industry to work together to drive overall success? I don't know if that question makes sense, or.
Does. I think it's both. Certainly, we are a for-profit business, and we are an industry that makes food, and we have ownership, and we employ a lot of people. So there is that. You know, it's a for-profit business, but as an industry as a whole, I think we do have a responsibility. One, again, educate people the process of where your food comes from, right? And then to work together. I think it's a collaboration. I think it's cliche, but of course it's communication. It's what I do. um, Everyone coming to the table, talking through it all, and understanding each person or each business and entity's place at the table and piece of the whole, to make sure it is our job. We do provide food. Everyone eats, right? We pride ourselves. We feed the world. We export about 30% of our product around the world. That's a great thing for us. I love the fact that our pork is in Japan or Korea or Mexico or Canada, wherever. I think that's awesome. And so I think we do have a responsibility to make sure that we can continue to supply the what the world demands.
I think it's that consistent balance between, again, how, as an entrepreneur or a company yourself, how do we drive profit, but yet work with people in the industry to drive the industry forward? Now, what do you love most about communications?
The people. I love, a big part of my job is getting out and talking to people on the floor, production especially. It's a world that I was not super familiar with. I know a lot now, way more than I ever thought I would. You talk about, when you're in college, you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to be this. Never in a million years, if you'd asked me where I would be right now, would not be here. I wouldn't be anywhere else. But I love the people. I love being able to tell people's stories. That's probably my favorite part of my job.
Where do we find the balance between the large producers, potentially Triumph, small producers, and the direct to consumer model that's become popular since COVID? So direct to consumer, as in backyard farmers, or I know some smaller operations are selling through their own butcher shop. So how do we balance all this out?
Oh boy, if I had that answer, I could probably retire, right? Yeah, I think it is communication. I think it is getting all the stakeholders and together. I think some of the associations that we have do a really good job of that, bringing the large companies, the small companies, the mom and pops. I think they do a lot of really good things for the industry, and to get everyone at the table together, and just open lines of communications and figuring out what people need. We understand that there's a place for each one of those, right? We are a large producer. We literally feed the world. Someone has to, but there are opportunities in individual communities and towns for all of these pieces. And I think just open lines of communication, and trying to find common ground instead of always being at odds. And it's not an us against them. To me, I see it, we are the swine industry or the food industry, and we are all working towards a common goal.
Michelle, Barton, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.